Former FBI Director James Comey was arraigned in a federal court in Virginia today following repeated calls by President Trump to prosecute him. Comey pleaded not guilty. His lawyer told the judge they would move to quickly dismiss the case, calling it a vindictive and selective prosecution. No cameras were in the court, but you could see Comey's family arriving, including, crucially, his daughter.
Charges against James come as we're learning more about a social media post from President Trump pressing Attorney General Pam Bondi to go after his political rivals. The White House saying it was posted in error. An administration official confirming to NBC News that Trump thought he had sent the message directly to Bondi, and he was surprised to learn he had actually posted the messages on Truth Social. Since the post was made, 2 of the 3 people mentioned by name in the post have been indicted, including James and former FBI Director James Comey.
Okay, so let me get this straight. 200 prosecutors gone. Just like that, fired by Attorney General Pam Bondi in what might be the biggest Justice Department purge in American history. And yeah, we're not talking about people who messed up their jobs or broke the rules. We're talking about career prosecutors who literally investigated Donald Trump, people who worked on January 6 cases, people who went after his allies. Can you believe this? Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another political drama, hold on, because what's happening right now at the DOJ isn't normal. It's not even close to normal. And the fact that half the country is cheering while the other half is screaming about dictatorship, that should tell you something wild is going down. Here's what we know. In September, Bondi sent out a memo, and this memo basically said act as Trump's representatives or get out. Like literally, if you won't appear in court for us, if you won't sign our briefs, you're done. Pack your stuff. Security will walk you out. And according to Justice Connection, that's an advocacy group for DOJ employees, about 200 people got the axe. 200. This is wild. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
You may remember Maureen Comey helped prosecute the case against Ghislaine Maxwell and was abruptly fired by Trump's DOJ this summer with no first-time prosecutor Lindsay Halligan, who's never prosecuted a case in her entire life, who was handpicked by Trump to be the U.S. attorney after the existing U.S. attorney was pushed out over his refusal to indict Comey. She was there along with the 2 prosecutors she added to the case only yesterday, admitting in court they weren't quite up to speed. Quote, "We're just getting our hands around the discovery." One of them saying there's a large amount of discovery. But the judge rejected the prosecution's request for more time and set a trial date for January 5th. If it ever reaches trial.
Think about that number for a second. We're not talking about a few problem employees. We're talking about an entire army of lawyers, many of them who spent years, sometimes decades, building cases that just happen to involve Trump or his inner circle. What are the odds, right? And here's where it gets even crazier. The DOJ's public corruption unit disbanded, just gone. The unit that's supposed to investigate corrupt politicians and powerful people abusing their positions, wiped out. Meanwhile, new investigations into Trump's political enemies are suddenly getting the green light. Investigations that were dormant or rejected before, now they're priority number 1. Come on. So Trump and Bondi are calling this ending the weaponization of justice. They're saying the DOJ has been used as a political weapon against conservatives for years, and now they're just cleaning house, draining the swamp, if you will, getting rid of the deep state operatives who are supposedly targeting Trump since day one. But here's the thing. Democratic senators are literally using the word dictatorship. They're standing in front of cameras saying this is the road to authoritarianism. Bipartisan legal experts, people who've worked under Republican and Democratic administrations, are sounding alarms. Even some Republicans, quietly, are uncomfortable with this because here's what nobody's really saying out loud, but everyone's thinking. If the president can just fire everyone investigating him, if he can dismantle the units meant to hold powerful people accountable, if he can order the attorney general to prosecute his enemies while protecting his friends, then what exactly is stopping any future president from doing the same thing? What are the rules anymore? And yeah, I know what some of you are thinking. Good. Finally, someone's fighting back against the system that went after Trump for years. The Russia investigation, the impeachments, the raids, the indictments. You think Trump supporters are going to shed tears over prosecutors losing their jobs? They're popping champagne. But, and this is a big but, do we really want to live in a country where the Justice Department is just an extension of whoever's sitting in the White House? Where prosecutors keep their jobs based on loyalty instead of the law? Because that cuts both ways. Today is Trump cleaning house. Tomorrow it could be someone else doing the exact same thing to people you agree with. This isn't just about Trump. This is about what happens to the Justice Department, to the idea that justice is supposed to be blind when politics takes over completely. And right now, we're watching that happen in real time. The firings started rolling out in waves. First, it was prosecutors who worked on January 6 cases. Then it was people connected to classified documents investigations. Then it was anyone who'd been involved in cases touching Trump's business empire. The pattern isn't exactly subtle, and Bondi isn't apologizing. She's doubling down, saying this is about restoring integrity. Integrity? Are you kidding me? So here we are, October 2025. The DOJ is in chaos. Hundreds of experienced prosecutors are gone. The people remaining know exactly what happens if they cross the administration. And investigations into Trump vanishing. Investigations into his opponents ramping up. This is the story everyone's talking about, but nobody quite knows how to process because it's happening so fast and it's so unprecedented that we're all just trying to figure out what it means for the country. And let me be clear about something. This isn't some technical legal story that only matters to lawyers and political junkies. This affects everyone. Because when the Justice Department stops being independent, when it becomes a tool for whoever's in power, that means the law stops applying equally. It means your rights, your protections, your ability to get justice, all of that becomes conditional. Conditional on whether you're on the right political team. That's terrifying. And it should be terrifying whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you love Trump or hate him. Because institutions are supposed to outlast any one person. They're supposed to protect all of us, regardless of who's president. But that's not what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing is the systematic dismantling of institutional independence. And the people cheering it on today, they might regret it tomorrow when the tables turn, because they always turn eventually. The thing is, Washington insiders saw this coming. When Trump picked Bondi, everyone knew she was loyal. Everyone knew she wasn't going to protect the prosecutors who went after him. But I don't think anyone expected it to happen this fast or this brutally. 200 people in a matter of weeks. That's not restructuring. That's not reform. That's revenge. And Trump's not even trying to hide it. He's been public about wanting to go after his enemies. He's been open about thinking the DOJ should work for him. This isn't some conspiracy theory. This is stated policy. This is what they campaign on, and now they're doing it. So let's break this down. Let's look at what actually happened, why it matters, and where this is all heading. Because trust me, this story is way bigger than just some firings. This is about the future of American democracy. This is about whether we're still a nation of laws or whether we've become something else entirely. All right, so let's rewind a little bit and talk about how we got here. Because this didn't just come out of nowhere, right? There's context, there's history. And if you don't understand that history, you're missing half the story. Trump has been saying for years that the Justice Department was weaponized against him. And he's not entirely wrong about feeling targeted. The guy's been investigated more than probably any politician in modern history. Russia collusion, Ukraine impeachment, January 6th, classified documents, business fraud in New York. The man has spent more time with lawyers than most people spend with their families. And his supporters, they watched all of this and said, yeah, this is a witch hunt. This is the establishment trying to take down an outsider. And honestly, when you look at the sheer volume of investigations, the constant leaks, the media coverage, you can see why people feel that way. Whether you think the investigations were justified or not, the optics were brutal. So Trump wins again in 2024, gets his second term, and one of his first moves, installing Pam Bondi as Attorney General. Now Bondi's not some random pick. She's been loyal to Trump for years, defended him publicly, stood by him through everything. She's not going to walk into the DOJ and play nice with the same people who spent the last few years building cases against her boss. Come on, we all knew something was coming, but I don't think anyone expected this. 200 people, that's not trimming the fat, that's a purge. And the targets, surgical. We're talking about prosecutors who worked on the most sensitive Trump-related cases, people who were in the room when decisions were made about charging his allies, career officials who've been at the DOJ for 15, 20, sometimes 30 years, gone. Now, here's where the narrative splits, and this is important. If you're on the Trump side, you're thinking finally, these people were part of a corrupt system. They leaked to the press, they stretched laws to go after conservatives, they ignored crimes by Democrats while inventing crimes for Republicans. Cleaning house isn't authoritarian, it's necessary. It's what happens when you let bureaucrats run wild for too long. And yeah, there's some truth to that critique. The DOJ isn't perfect. There have been legitimate concerns about bias, about selective prosecution, about the way political cases get handled. That's real. But here's the problem. The solution to a potentially politicized Justice Department isn't to make it more politicized in the other direction. It's not to turn it into a literal loyalty operation. And that's what Bondi's memo did. She basically told DOJ lawyers, you work for Trump now, not for the Constitution, not for justice, for Trump. You represent him. You sign briefs supporting his positions. You show up in court and argue his cases, or you're out. This is wild, because historically, the whole point of the Justice Department's independence was to prevent exactly this. The DOJ is supposed to make decisions based on law and evidence, not based on what the president wants. That's why there are norms. That's why career prosecutors usually stay in their jobs across administrations. That's why attorneys general are supposed to maintain some distance from the White House, but those norms, they're being shredded. And once they're gone, they're really hard to get back. Let's talk about what actually happened after the firings. The DOJ's Public Corruption Unit, the one that investigates dirty politicians and corporate fraud and abuse of power, disbanded. Just eliminated. Now, why would you do that? If you're genuinely trying to clean up corruption, wouldn't you want that unit stronger, not gone? Unless, and this is where it gets uncomfortable, unless you don't want anyone investigating corruption that might hit too close to home. Meanwhile, Bondi's DOJ started opening new investigations into Trump's political opponents, into people who criticized him, into prosecutors and officials who worked on cases against him. Suddenly, there's talk about investigating the investigators, about whether people who brought charges against Trump committed crimes themselves. It's like reverse prosecution. And the people still working at the DOJ, they're terrified. Multiple reports say morale is at an all-time low. Lawyers are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to make decisions that might upset the administration because they just watched 200 of their colleagues get fired for doing exactly that. Can you believe this? Now Democrats are losing their minds. Senate hearings in early October feature some of the most heated exchanges in years. Senators demanding answers from Bondi, asking her point blank if she's turning the DOJ into Trump's personal law firm. And Bondi's responses? Basically, we're restoring integrity, we're ending the deep state, we're making sure justice is actually blind. But like, the irony, the DOJ fires everyone who investigated Trump and then claims it's making justice blind? Come on, that's not blind justice, that's selective justice, that's loyalty-based justice. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, that should concern you. Because here's the thing, nobody wants to admit, this isn't actually about Trump. Not really. It's about precedent. It's about what happens to institutions when they become tools of whoever's in power. Today, it's Republicans using the DOJ against Democrats. But what happens in 4 years when Democrats win? Do they purge everyone and go after Republicans? Do we just keep doing this back and forth until the Justice Department is completely destroyed as an independent institution? That's the road we're on. And yeah, it's scary. Even if you hate Trump, even if you love Trump, this should worry you. Because institutions are hard to build and really easy to break. And once they're broken, once people stop trusting that justice means anything beyond politics, you can't just fix that overnight. Let me give you some perspective here. Past administrations have fired individual prosecutors for cause, for corruption, for incompetence, for breaking rules, but 200 people, all at once, all connected to investigations of the president? That's never happened. Not under Obama, not under Bush, not under Clinton, not in modern American history. This is unprecedented. And unprecedented usually means dangerous, because it means we're in uncharted territory where the old rules don't apply and nobody knows what happens next. The legal community is freaking out. Bar associations are issuing statements. Former attorneys general from both parties are speaking out. Federal judges are making rare public comments about threats to judicial independence. This isn't just partisan noise. These are serious people who've dedicated their lives to the law, saying, hey, something really bad is happening here. And the public split right down the middle. Half the country thinks Trump is finally draining the swamp. The other half thinks we're sliding into authoritarianism. And both sides have completely stopped listening to each other. So where does this leave us? With the Justice Department in turmoil, with investigations that may or may not be legitimate, with prosecutors making decisions based on politics instead of law, with a precedent that's going to haunt us for decades. And we're just getting started. Think about the prosecutors who got fired. These aren't political appointees who come and go with administrations. These are career professionals, people who've prosecuted drug cartels, organized crime, domestic terrorists, corrupt officials, people with decades of experience building complex cases. That expertise doesn't just vanish, it walks out the door, and you can't replace it easily. The Justice Department's reputation, built over more than a century, is being torched in real time. Foreign governments are watching, criminals are watching, and they're all learning the same lesson, that American justice is for sale to whoever controls the White House. Are you kidding me? And here's something else nobody's talking about, the chilling effect. Prosecutors still at the DOJ know what happens if they cross Trump. They know their colleagues got fired, so when a case comes across their desk that involves someone connected to the administration, what do? Do they pursue it aggressively, knowing they might lose their job? Or do they play it safe? That's not how justice is supposed to work. Prosecutors should make decisions based on evidence, not fear. But fear is exactly what's driving decisions now. And that means guilty people are getting away with crimes That means powerful people are above the law. That means justice really isn't blind anymore. The reports coming out of the DOJ are disturbing. Anonymous lawyers saying they're looking for exits. People with 20-year careers suddenly updating their resumes. The institutional knowledge that's walking out the door is staggering. And for what? To protect one man from accountability? Come on. Okay, so let's break this down into what actually matters. Because I know this is a lot. DOJ drama, firings, political chaos. It's easy to get lost in the noise, but there are really 3 core things you need to understand about what's happening right now. First, the scale. 200 prosecutors and senior career officials. That's massive. To put it in perspective, the entire DOJ has around 10,000 employees. So we're talking about roughly 2% of the workforce, but not just any 2%. These are experienced prosecutors, people who know how to build complex cases, people who've been doing this for decades in some cases. You don't replace that kind of institutional knowledge overnight. And here's what that means practically. Cases are being dropped. Investigations are stalling. Defense attorneys are having a field day because the prosecution teams are in chaos. Even cases that have nothing to do with Trump are getting affected because the DOJ is hemorrhaging talent and experience. Justice Connection, that's the advocacy group for DOJ employees, said about 200 were fired and they're not coming back. Once you purge people like this, once you make it clear that political loyalty matters more than legal expertise, you don't attract the best and brightest anymore. You attract people who want to please the boss. That's problem number 1, the competence crisis, the brain drain, the transformation of the Justice Department from a legal institution into something else. Think about what this means for ongoing cases. You've got trials scheduled, appeals in progress, grand juries convene, and suddenly the lead prosecutors are gone. Defense lawyers are filing motions to dismiss. Judges are expressing concern about prosecutorial continuity. Witnesses are getting nervous because the people who promised to protect them aren't there anymore. This is wild. And it's not just high-profile political cases. We're talking about drug trafficking prosecutions, child exploitation cases, white-collar fraud, organized crime. All of that is being disrupted because the DOJ is in chaos. Victims aren't getting justice. Criminals are walking free, all because of a political purge. Second thing, the targeting. Like, let's be real about what happened here. The people who got fired weren't random. They were specifically the prosecutors who worked on Trump-related cases. January 6th investigations, those prosecutors are gone. Classified documents case, those people are out. Capitol riot prosecutions, disbanded or reassigned. The pattern is so obvious, it's almost insulting that anyone's pretending otherwise. And then you've got the flip side. Public corruption unit, eliminated. That's the unit that goes after powerful people who abuse their positions. Why would you shut that down unless you're worried about what they might find? Meanwhile, new investigations into Trump's enemies are getting approved. People who investigated Trump are now being investigated themselves. It's like weaponization in reverse. And the justification is that the DOJ was weaponized before, so now we're unweaponizing it by weaponizing it the other way. Which, come on, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Are you kidding me? And Bondi's memo makes it crystal clear. Act as Trump's representatives, not as independent prosecutors, not as officers of the court, as Trump's representatives. That's the language. That's what she told DOJ lawyers. You represent him now. And if you can't do that, if you won't sign briefs supporting his positions, if you won't show up in court and argue his cases, you're fired. That's not normal. That's not how the Justice Department is supposed to function. The Attorney General works for the American people, not for the president personally. The DOJ's job is to enforce the law, not to protect whoever's in the White House. But that's what we're seeing now. A DOJ that's being transformed into a political weapon. And yeah, I know Trump supporters will say it was already a political weapon against him. Maybe, probably even. But the answer isn't to make it worse. The answer isn't to destroy whatever independence was left. Let's talk about the specific investigations that are being killed. The January 6th prosecutions, hundreds of cases against people who stormed the Capitol. Some of those cases are being dropped. Sentences are being reviewed. Pardons are being discussed. The message? If you're on Trump's side, you're protected. If you went after Trump, you're a target. The classified documents investigation, dead. The prosecutors who worked on it, gone. The evidence they collected, being reevaluated by Trump loyalists who are suddenly finding all kinds of problems with it. It's almost like when you control the people investigating you, you can make investigations disappear. Come on. In the new investigations, they're targeting people who dared to hold Trump accountable, prosecutors who brought charges, judges who ruled against him, witnesses who testified. The message is clear. If you cross Trump, we're coming for you. Not with evidence, not with legitimate charges, but with the power of the federal government turned into a weapon. Third thing, and this is the big one, the precedent. What happens next? Because once you break these norms, once you establish that it's okay to purge prosecutors who investigate you, once you make the Justice Department a loyalty operation that doesn't just go away when Trump leaves office, the next Democratic president, they're going to do the same thing. Why wouldn't they? Trump did it. It worked. He got away with it. So the next person comes in and fires everyone who worked for Trump, starts investigations into Republican politicians, uses the DOJ as a political tool, and then the next Republican does it even harder, and back and forth forever until the Justice Department is just a revolving door of partisan revenge. This is wild. That's the future we're building. And once we're there, once that's the new normal, how do we ever get back? How do we restore public trust in the justice system? How do we convince anyone that courts and prosecutors are fair when everyone knows they're just political actors in robes and suits? Senate testimony in early October literally featured Democrats calling this the road to dictatorship. Now that's hyperbolic language, but is it wrong? When you control the Justice Department, when you can investigate your enemies and protect your friends, when you can fire anyone who questions you, what is that? It's not democracy in any meaningful sense. It's not the rule of law, it's the rule of whoever has power. And here's what makes this so dangerous. Half the country doesn't care. They think Trump is justified. They think he's fighting back against a system that tried to destroy him. And they're not entirely wrong about the system targeting him, but they're missing the bigger picture. They're missing what happens when you give this kind of power to someone you don't like, because power doesn't stay with your team forever. Republicans cheering this today, what are they going to say when a Democrat does the exact same thing in 4 years? Are they going to suddenly remember why DOJ independence matters? Are they going to pretend they care about norms and institutions? Probably not, because that's where we are now. Pure political tribalism. My team good, your team bad. Whatever helps us win is justified. Whatever hurts them is necessary. And the casualties, truth, justice, democratic norms, institutional integrity, all the boring stuff that actually holds a country together. So yeah, where does this go from here? The firings are done. The purge happened. Bondi's in charge. The DOJ is now officially Trump's Justice Department. Investigations into him are quietly dying. Investigations into his opponents are ramping up. The message is clear. Loyalty gets rewarded. Disloyalty gets punished. And we're all just watching it happen. Some people horrified. Some people celebrating. Most people too exhausted by politics to even care anymore. But here's the thing. You should care, because this isn't just about Trump. This is about what kind of country we're going to be. Are we a nation of laws or a nation of power? Do institutions matter, or is everything just politics now? Can we hold powerful people accountable, or is accountability only for the little guys? These are real questions, and the answers we're seeing right now, they're not good. They're not reassuring. They're actually pretty terrifying when you think about them for more than 5 seconds. 200 prosecutors, gone. The public corruption unit, disbanded. Trump investigations, ended. Enemy investigations, started. DOJ independence, dead. This is where we are. October 2025. And honestly, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. Because once you break something this fundamental, once you destroy the idea that justice is separate from politics, you can't just put it back together. You can't just restore trust and independence and fairness with a memo or a speech. It takes decades to build institutions. It takes weeks to destroy them. And we're watching the destruction happen live. Let me tell you what's going to happen next. Because this story isn't over. Not even close. Those new investigations Bondi's approving, they're going to produce arrests, indictments, trials. We're going to see Trump's political opponents getting perp walked on national television. And half the country is going to cheer while the other half screams about fascism. And the worst part? We won't even know if the charges are legitimate, because when you've destroyed institutional credibility, when you've made it clear that the DOJ is a political tool, nobody trusts anything anymore. Guilty people will claim they're being persecuted, innocent people will be destroyed by investigations, and the public won't be able to tell the difference. That's what happens when you weaponize justice. It stops meaning anything. It's just power. Naked, brutal power, dressed up in legal language. Are you kidding me? And the prosecutors who are left, they're learning the lesson. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Do what you're told, because independence gets you fired. Loyalty gets you promoted. That's the new DOJ culture. That's what Bondi created with her purge. Think about the message this sends to every lawyer in America. If you want to work at the Justice Department, you better pick a side. You better be willing to bend the law to protect your political team. You better be comfortable with selective prosecution and politically motivated investigations, because that's the job now. The best legal minds in the country, they're not applying to the DOJ anymore. Why would they? Why would you want to work somewhere that's become a joke? Somewhere that's traded integrity for loyalty? Somewhere that fires you for following the evidence instead of following orders? So yeah, that's the story. That's what Bondi's purge actually means. Not just 200 people losing their jobs, but the end of the Justice Department as we knew it. The transformation of law enforcement into political enforcement. Welcome to the new normal, where loyalty matters more than law, where power matters more than justice, where the only thing that counts is which side you're on. Can you believe this is where we ended up? Next time, we'll talk about what happens when these new Trump investigations actually start producing results. Because if you think this is controversial now, just wait until prosecutors start arresting political opponents. That's coming, and it's going to make this look tame. We'll also dig into which specific politicians are being targeted, which investigations are getting greenlit, what charges are being considered, because this isn't theoretical anymore. This is happening. Real people are going to face real consequences based on political loyalty instead of actual crimes. But that's a story for another day. For now, just sit with what's already happened. 200 prosecutors gone, just like that. The public corruption unit eliminated. DOJ independence destroyed. And half the country thinks this is a good thing. That's where we are. That's America in October 2025. A country where justice has become just another political weapon. Where institutions exist only to serve whoever's in power. Where the law applies differently depending on your team. And once you go down this road, once you cross that line, it's really hard to come back. Maybe impossible. Wow.